Okay, I made it. 24 videos on Pete Rose's 24-year career. Ken Arzon here, Vista, California, Sunday, March 23rd, 2025. This video, a recap of Pete Rose's career, the good, the bad, and the ugly. I got a lot to say. I read a lot of books on Pete Rose. I've seen a lot of videos on Pete Rose. I've looked at interviews of Pete Rose. Charismatic guy. Let's start with the good. He starts his career in 1963, 22 years old. He plays 157 games. Not bad, gets 170 hits. Then he plays until the 1986 season where he's 45 years old. Racks up 3,562 hits, or 62 games, excuse me. A record that will not be broken. 3,562 games. Incredible. And by looking at his career, I've got it here on Baseball Reference. He went 23 seasons in a row over 100 games played. Then I'm counting how many times did he play 140 plus games in a season? I've got to count it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. 19 seasons, 140 games played. A record. I'm talking about the good right now with Pete Rose, okay? The good. How about 150 plus games? He did that 15 times. How about 160 plus games? He did that 9 times. So these are all records that will not be broken. You think anybody else is going to get 3,562 games played? No way, not in today's age. Pete Rose, Charlie Hustle, and he had longevity. Didn't get injured that much. He went a stretch. Listen to this. Starting with 1970. He played 159 games. Then he played 160, 154, 160, 163, 162, 162, 162, 159, 163, 162. That was the 1970s. Incredible. Plate appearances, 15,890. That is a record that will not be broken. Then he gets 14,053 plate appearances. That is a record that will not be broken. So he's got games played. He's got the 140 games in a season record. He's got the 150 game seasons records. He's got 160 games seasons record. Then he has the plate appearances record, and he has the at-bat records. How about this? How many times did Pete Rose get 600 at-bats, not plate appearances, but at-bats in a season? I got to count it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17 seasons, 600 or more at bats. That is another record that will not be broken. His high was 680. How about plate appearances? How many times did he have 700 or more plate appearances? Let me count again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 times 700 plate appearances. A record that will not be broken. No one else is playing that much these days. Even Cal Ripken didn't break that. He didn't break what Pete Rose did. All right, runs scored. 2,165. I like it. He breaks 2,000 mark, which should be a goal for a career ball player. How many times did he get 100 runs scored in a season? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 times out of 24 years. Now that was a little concerning to me. Why? 24 years. Pete Rose said in an interview he wanted 100 runs scored in a season. That was his goal. He did it 10 times. It should have been about 15 or 16. If he's playing all those games, 150 games, 160 games in a season, and all the at-bats and plate appearances, he should have had like 15, maybe 16, 17 seasons, 100 runs scored. But then I looked a little closer. How many times did he do 90 plus? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 times he had 90 plus. So we can say 15 seasons, 90 or more runs scored. That's pretty good. I just wish his high was 130 runs scored in the season. He had 120 twice. I wish he would have had like 17, 18 seasons, 100 runs scored. That would have been a record, but he doesn't have the record. Who holds the record for most 100 runs scored seasons? I think Babe Ruth and Lou Gehrig are right up there. They have like 13, 14 seasons. I'll have to look that one up. But Pete doesn't hold that record. How about this record? 4,256 hits. That is a record that will not be broken. He passes Ty Cobb. But what's interesting about this record is it took him 500 plus more games to break it than Ty Cobb. If you compare Ty Cobb's totals, all right, let's do this. I've got it here. Ty Cobb, let's put him in. We know he had the record of career hits, right? He had 4,189. He did it in 3,034 games. So the question has to be asked, at what point did Pete Rose, how many hits did Pete Rose have at game 3,034? Because that's what Ty Cobb had. Do you know what the answer is there? Okay, so we know that Pete played 3,562 games, Cobb 3,034. That's a difference of 528 games, right? So go to Pete. At what point was Pete at 3,034 games? Well, according to this, if you do the math, it was around the 1982 season. How many hits did Pete Rose have at game 3,034? Well, here's what we do. We go to the 1982 season, add up the hits for 82, 83, 84, 85, 86. Okay? I'm doing it right now. Got it. Pete Rose, 56. 42, 56, and you minus, he had 500 less hits. 42, 56. At game 3034, Pete Rose had 3,756 hits. Who's a better hitter? Ty Cobb. Because Cobb at game 3034 had 4,189. Pete at 3,756. Who's the all-time greatest hitter of all time? You gotta say Ty Cobb. What he did in those games. Now, he played in a different era than Pete. I'll understand that. But I think that was interesting to point out. Pete broke Ty Cobb's record, 42-56. But it took him 500 more games to do it. Give Cobb 500 more games. Can we say a hit a game for Cobb? He would have had 4,700 hits, roughly. Maybe 4,800 if he's averaging more than a hit a game. See the difference between Cobb and Rose? So when he broke Ty Cobb's record, you can celebrate it, but I look at perspective. If they played the same number of games and Pete Rose broke it, I would say Pete Rose is a better hitter, but he didn't do it. Ty Cobb is the all-time greatest hitter of all time. How about Pete Rose, though? Let's ask this trivia question. How many times did Pete Rose have 100 or more hits in a season? 23 times, 100 or more hits. 10 times, 200 or more hits. That's a record. Him and Ichiro Suzuki have 10 200-hit seasons. So I'm listing the good of Pete Rose right now. I'm listing the records. How about this? Did you know that Pete Rose had 190 plus hits? Do you know how many times? 1, 2, 3. 3 other times. One time was 198. Then he had 198 twice. So he's 2 hits short of 200, and then he had 192. So we can say that Pete Rose had 13 seasons, 190 hits in a season. 23 seasons, 100 or more hits. 10 seasons, 200 or more hits. His high was 230 hits. Doubles. Pete, 746 career doubles. Top 5 all time. Tris Speaker holds the record, 792 doubles. How about Pete Rose, 746? He had one season, 51 doubles. Tris Speaker had about 5 of them. 5 seasons, 50 or more doubles. I believe it was 4 or 5. I'd have to look more at his stats. Triples, Pete Rose, 135. It's not as many as some of the other guys. I think the record is over 300 triples in a career. I think that's Sam Rice, right? 160 homers. Pete was not a home run guy. His high was 16 in a season. And he went some seasons without even hitting a home run. So he's not a slugger. RBIs. 1,314 career RBIs. It's not good. Sorry. That's part of the bad. I'll get into the bad after I finish the good. I'm doing the good, the bad, and the ugly of Pete Rose. Right now, I want to stick with the good. So we'll bypass the RBIs. That's in the bad section. I'll get to that. 198 stolen bases. Again, that's another one where it's in the bad section. So we'll skip that. He had 1,566 walks. That's good. You get 1,000 walks in your career, that's really noteworthy. But 1,566 for Pete. He had 106 one year. That's good. He's not swinging so much at wild pitches. He's taking the walk when he has to. And that's how he scored the 2,165 runs, because he was on base. The strikeouts, 1,143. I'm going to put that in the bad section, so we'll bypass that. 303 career batting average. I like he passed 300 career, but I'm going to kind of hold off on that one too, okay? He had 3 batting titles. His high was 348. He had 16 seasons, 300 or better. I'm going to get to that as I'll analyze the RBIs, the strikeouts, and the batting average. I've got to put some of that in the bad. Sorry. On base, 375 career. I'm going to put that in the bad. Slugging, 409 is average for a guy like him. So that's not in the bad. And I'm not going to say it's in the good. It's in the average. And then he gets 5,752 total bases. He had 3 seasons, 300 total bases. Then he had 2 other seasons. I'm counting 4 other seasons, 290 plus. So I could say about 7 seasons of total bases that were good. I'm going to say that's in the average to the good side. So those are the stats on Pete Rose. I mentioned the good, the records, games, at bats, plate appearances, the hits, runs scored, so forth. Now the bad. Are you ready? I'm going to give you a forewarning. If you don't like it, you can skip this part of the video, but I got to mention some of the bad. Number 1, RBIs. Pete Rose never had 100 RBIs in a season. That is unacceptable to me. How do you get 200 hits in a season 10 times? How do you get over 600 at bats? How do you get over these 160 games played and yet never attain 100 RBIs in a season? He had, one year he had 157 games played and he got 41 RBIs. Totally unacceptable. And then another year, this year was baffling to me. He played 160 games one year and had 44 RBIs. He had 632 at-bats, only 44 RBIs. Did you know that Lou Gehrig had 150 RBIs in a season 8 times? How does Pete Rose go 24 years and not having even close to 100 RBIs? His high was 81. He did that his high was 82, excuse me. He had 2 seasons, 80 RBIs. That's all. 82 was his high. He had some seasons 50, 60, 70. Why? I'm blaming the manager. He batted Pete leadoff. No. Bat him third. Why? The third guy in the lineup is your best hitter, right? Pete would have had at least 8 or 9, maybe 10 seasons, 100 RBIs if he batted third. I believe so. Because look at all the hits he got and all the plate appearances. 4 or 5 plate appearances a game. 200 hits in a season 10 times. Just think if he's batting third, how many times those guys would have been on base, and where he gets 200 hits in a season, he's driving them in with doubles and triples and singles, a lot of singles. Just think of all the times that Pete Rose may have come up with the bases loaded. And he gets a double down the line and they score 3 RBI. By batting leadoff, that means that guys weren't on base as much for Pete. Because the 6, 7, 8, and 9 hitters, where the 9 hitter is the pitcher, they're not on base as much. But the number 1, 2 guys are going to be on base more. Wouldn't you agree there? So this is bad. Pete Rose should have ended up with 2,000 RBIs. Now, I'll prove my point with this. Did you know that Ty Cobb was a similar player to Pete Rose, right? Did you know how many career RBIs Ty Cobb had? 1,944. Pete played 500 more games than Ty Cobb, yet had 600 less RBIs. Go figure. Ty Cobb, I didn't realize this until I looked it up. He had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 seasons, 100 RBIs. He had another season where he had 2 other seasons, 90 plus. So 9 seasons, 90 or more RBIs. Pete Rose never got to 90 RBIs. Ty Cobb's total, 1,944 RBIs. Why? Cobb batted 3rd or 4th. Cobb was not a leadoff guy. But aren't they similar hitters? Because they both have over 4,000 hits. Rose beat Cobb in 200 hit seasons. He had 10. Cobb had 9 of them. 9 200 hit seasons. 1,944 RBIs for Cobb. 1,314 for Rose. That's a difference of 600 RBIs. See what I mean? So I'm going to put that in the bad section for Pete Rose, the RBIs. Here's another one. Strikeouts. 1,143. Now, granted, he had 15,890 plate appearances with 14,053 at bats. So you're going to rack up strikeouts with that many at bats. Did you know that Pete Rose never struck out 100 times in a season? I like that. I like that stat. But the 1,143 strikeouts, I don't like it. I'm going to put it in the bad section. Pete should have been around 500 to 600 strikeouts in his career. Just be a contact hitter, Pete. To rack up that many strikeouts. Now, how many strikeouts did Ty Cobb have? 680. See the difference? And you know, Tony Gwynn is another guy, similar hitter to Pete, right? You know how many strikeouts he had? 400. So you see, for Pete to go over 1,000 strikeouts, I'm going to put that in the bad career. But you can say that Pete had so many plate appearances that the strikeouts would add up. But still, he should have been around 500 strikeouts career. Here's another one I don't like on Pete Rose. Career on base percentage. 375. Not good enough for me. It should have been 400. 40% of the time should be your goal for on base. Now, guys like Babe Ruth and Ted Williams, they were 480 on base career. Did you know that Ted Williams one year had a 500 on base percentage? Half the time he was on base. So Pete was 375 career. He only had, I'm counting it, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times he got 40% on base percentage for the season. That's not enough. He should have had like 12, 13, 14 times 400 or better on base. So I'm going to put that in the bad. His career on base percentage. 409 slugging, I'm going to let that one go. He's not a slugger. And the total bases, 5,752. That's a huge number. Should have been more. For Pete to play 24 years and have all those games, he should have broke 6,000 total bases. He didn't do it. Did you know that Aaron and Mays, they broke 6,000? And they played less games. So Pete, I would have liked to have seen 6,000 total bases. All right, I've covered the good and the bad. How about the ugly? Yikes. I've read books on Pete Rose. We know about the gambling. Here's the ugly. Pete Rose is not in the Baseball Hall of Fame. That is unacceptable. And that is an ugly stain, not only for Pete, but for Major League Baseball in general. How is Pete Rose? I just listed the records that will not be broken. 303 career batting average, so he's got the 300 batting average criteria. He's got the 2,000 runs scored criteria. He's got 4,000 over hits criteria. He's got the 5,000 or more total bases criteria. About 746 doubles criteria. The at-bats, the games played, the 200 hit seasons, the 16 seasons 300 or better. How is Pete Rose not in the Baseball Hall of Fame according to the stats? Well, the ugly part is the gambling. They did the report that he bet on baseball games. Now, Pete said he always bet for teams to win, not to lose. And he bet on his own team. The ugly part is this, Pete, you should have known the rules. I believe it's posted when you sign a contract with a baseball organization. Doesn't the contract say no gambling? And doesn't the league overall have requirements for baseball players? No gambling. Man. But Pete broke the rule for his greed. I don't understand it. So this is the ugly part. Another ugly part is, well, I've read the personal side of Pete and losing his temper. I think as a ball player, you're on a world-class stage. You need to control your temper. We know the fight he had running into second base. Who was it? I guess it was it. I forgot the guy's name. You've seen the video, right? He's going into second base. He slides really hard, takes out the guy, and the second baseman calls him a name, and Pete, they get into a slugfest and a big fight right there. Unacceptable, Pete. If you're going to slide into second base, you don't want to kill the guy. You can break up the play, but don't try to injure him. That was ugly. Also, Pete rounding third one game and slamming into the catcher and injuring him. Now, I know the catcher was in the way, but Pete, that's ugly. You can't slam in the way you did. You did a body block. I mean, you just flew into him like you were Superman, and you injured the guy. That was ugly. I didn't like that. Those two incidents. Also, the personal side of Pete, I don't like to. I don't know really what happened so much, but I did read in the books that I read. Problems with marriage, affairs, paternity suits, lawsuits, tax evasion. That's the ugly side. He was in prison 5 months. So, Pete, I admired all your hitting ability, your games played, your batting average, and what you did on the ball field. But the second side is you got to be a citizen in this country too, and you have the personal side. Why did you blow it? Why did you do all these things? Tax evasion? Got to pay your taxes. Paternity suits? Unfaithful in your marriage? Now, I can't judge people's marriage. We don't know what both sides do to each other. But the personal side is just the ugly, ugly side. And I didn't like it. Now, here's the fundamental question you may want to ask me. Should Pete Rose be in the Baseball Hall of Fame? My answer is yes. I know that gambling is the ugly side and he broke the rules. But you can't ignore the baseball stats and accomplishments and records of Pete Rose. You can't ignore that. And that's what baseball is doing right now. They're ignoring it. Put Pete Rose into the Baseball Hall of Fame. Have a certain section. I know it's been debated. Should it be in or should it be out? Have a certain section. List the accomplishments of Pete Rose and the records. Is the Baseball Hall of Fame going to keep people out because of their personal ugly side? I'm sure a lot of ball players throughout the years have had extra affairs, cheated on their wives. I'm sure ball players have evaded taxes. I'm sure ball players have gotten into fights. I'm sure, in fact, I think there are certain ball players in the Baseball Hall of Fame that have been involved in a fist fight and someone's died. Now, whether that's murder or manslaughter, I don't know. There is a ball player in the Hall of Fame that was in a fight one day and the guy died. Is that manslaughter? Is that murder? But he's in the Baseball Hall of Fame. Who's the player I'm talking about? Well, if you read the books, Ty Cobb, he was being followed by some thugs. A big fight. I think Cobb took out some of the guys, and one of the guys died. Is that murder? I don't know. I don't think it's murder, but I think it's manslaughter. But Ty Cobb's in the Baseball Hall of Fame. He had an ugly side, too. Babe Ruth had some ugly sides, right? Just think of all the affairs that he had. But Babe's in the Hall of Fame. Ty Cobb's in the Baseball Hall of Fame. There's some other guys pretty shady. They're in the Baseball Hall of Fame. Even some maybe have taken some steroids. They're in the Hall of Fame. Now, other guys are not in the Hall of Fame because of the steroids or whatever. So you're asking me the question, should Pete Rose be in? Yes, according to the stats. The ugly side is there, the gambling. Joe Jackson's not in the Baseball Hall of Fame because of that 1919 scandal where the White Sox threw the World Series. Joe Jackson collected, $5,000. You know that, right? $5,000 under his pillow. Should Joe Jackson be in the Baseball Hall of Fame? .356 career batting average. Good player. That's debatable. But Pete, he needs to be in the Baseball Hall of Fame. Pete passed away. This is why I can talk about him. I admired Pete Rose when I watched him on TV. And his interviews, very smart guy for baseball. So you have the good, then you have the bad, and the ugly. In fact, a lot of baseball players today have those three things. Some have more, some has less. Pete has a lot of good. He has some of the bad and some of the ugly. I don't know. Anyways, what can you say at this point? All right, Ken Arzon here in Vista, California, covering Pete Rose's 24-year career. How about that? And I just finished going through all the box scores and all the seasons of another player, and this is something I've been doing, I'd say now 6 months. And what I like to do at the end of these recaps is recap all the guys that I've covered so far. I started with episode 1001, Babe Ruth. Then I went to Ty Cobb, Lou Gehrig. All these guys, I've covered their box scores and seasons, the same as I just did with Pete Rose's 24-year career. Babe Ruth, Ty Cobb, Lou Gehrig, Stan Musial, Tris Speaker, Rogers Hornsby, Ted Williams, Tony Gwynn, Ed Delonte, George Sisler, Jesse Burkett, Joe Jackson, Willie Keeler, Billy Hamilton, Harry Heilman, Joe DiMaggio, Bill Terry, Lefty O'Doul, Dave Orr, Dan Brothers, Pete Browning, Nap Lajoie, Al Simmons, Sam Thompson, Cap Hansen, Jimmy Fox, Honus Wagner, Willie Mays, Henry Aaron, Hank Greenberg, Hugh Duffy, Eddie Collins, Paul Wainer, Lloyd Wainer, Chuck Klein, Sam Rice, Roberto Clemente, Henny Manouche, and now I just finished Pete Rose. Who's next? I could pick anybody, really, but I've been focusing. All these guys have a 300 or better career batting average, and they have extraordinary accomplishments in their careers. All these guys I've listed. Who's next? Who is noteworthy in baseball history? That's what I like to get into. So I'm looking at career batting average leaders. Some of these guys didn't play as long. They have 300 career batting averages. There's someone who's very noteworthy. He was a pretty good player. Played 18 years. No, 19 years. Rod Carew. Have you heard of him? Good player, good hitter. Let's do Rod Carew next. Talk to you later. Respectfully, I'm out.